Chapter 11 Jiang Hu The Yellow Weasel? The Nitrarlane Main Wang paused. His mind immediately conjured up the image of the young man in yellow robes who had mocked him earlier. Though the moniker seemed fitting, he wasn't entirely sure if they were referring to the same person. "Haven't you seen him?" Jiang Hu took a sip of water, his voice laden with resentment. "He's the one who assigns tasks to the registered disciples, though he's also a registered disciple himself. He's already gained permission to practice immortal arts, wears yellow robes, has a sinister face, looks exactly like a wolf cub. That's what we all call him behind his back." While chewing on his sweet potato, Lin Wang replied, "Oh, now I know who you mean. I just met him today. He demanded that I fill 10 vats with water daily starting tomorrow, or I won't get any food." This revelation left Jiang Hu stunned. He stared at Lin Wang for a long moment before asking, "Brother, do you have some kind of grudge with him?" Seeing Lin Wang shake his head, Zhang aside and looked at him with pity. "Lin Wang, you don't think these vats are the same size as the water containers we use at home, do you?" He gestured with his hands to demonstrate. When Lin Wang nodded, Jiang Hu's face broke into a bitter smile. "You must have offended the yellow weasel somehow. The vats he's talking about are almost as big as this entire room, 10 vats full of water." He shook his head and placed the remaining sweet potatoes back on the table. "Keep these. You'll be lucky to eat once every 4 or 5 days. You, reign new here, and all the spots where wild fruits grow have been claimed by others, only the elderly are to gather some. I'll stick to my wild fruits." With that he lay back. Lin Wang suppressed the anger rising in his chest, thinking of his parents' hopeful expressions, and forced himself to sleep. Before dawn the next day, he was already up. Jiang Hu was still snoring away as Lin Wang changed into his robes and hurried to the store at Jeria by the time he arrived. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten. The yellow-robed young man pushed open the door, giving him a sidelong glance before saying sarcastically, "At least you're punctual. Go get your water buckets. Exit through the east gate. There's a spring in the mountains. That's where you'll fetch the water." With that he dismissed Lin Wang. Sitting cross-legged to face the sunrise in meditation, pale qi emerged from his nostrils, coiling like a white dragon. Lin Wang cast an envious glance before entering the storage room. After looking around, he finally discovered the 10 enormous vats behind the door. With a wry smile, he picked up 2 water buckets and headed toward the east gate. The story continues to unfold, maintaining the original plot while incorporating more vivid descriptions, deeper psychological insights, and richer environmental details. The English version places greater emphasis on characters, a greater emphasis on atmospheric storytelling, making the narrative more immersive, more. After walking far along the mountain path, Lin Wang finally found the spring. Crystal clear water bubbled up from between the rocks, gleaming like silver in the morning light. Though the scenery was breathtaking, he had no time to admire it. He quickly filled his buckets and began the arduous journey back up the mountain. By sunset he had barely managed to fill 1 vat. It hadn't been for the few sweet potatoes he'd eaten at noon, he might not have even accomplished that much. Even so, his arms and legs were screaming in protest, sending sharp pains through his body with every movement. After some contemplation, he carried half a bucket of water to a secluded spot, carefully scanning his surroundings to ensure he was alone. He retrieved the mysterious stone bead from his chest and dropped it into the bucket, swirling it around. A moment later, he recovered the bead and drank the entire contents of the bucket immediately. A warm current spread through his body from his core, gradually extending to his extremities and dissipating the muscle pain. Though the effect wasn't as miraculous as the morning dew, Lin Wang was ecstatic. He gently touched the spot where he kept the bead hidden against his chest, once again vowing to himself this treasure must remain his secret alone. After drinking the entire half bucket of bead-infused spring water, he felt his energy surge, his vitality restored. He immediately resumed his water-carrying duties with renewed vigor. By the end of that day, he had managed to fill 1½ vats. Before returning to his quarters, he drank another half bucket of the enchanted water, carefully maintaining an appearance of exhaustion to avoid suspicion. Shortly after, Jiang Hu returned, his face still bearing the marks of extreme fatigue. After a brief exchange, he hesitated before sheepishly requesting 2 sweet potatoes, which he devoured before collapsing into a deep sleep. Time flew swiftly, and before he knew it, Lin Wang had spent a month at the Heng Yue Sect. During this time, when Wang had gained a deeper understanding of the sex hierarchy and rules, he learned that Zhang Hu's task was woodcutting, requiring him to meet a daily quota before earning his meals. For 3 years since becoming a registered disciple, this had been his life. Initially, he could only earn a meal every 3 or 4 days. Surviving mainly on water now, he had improved enough to eat every other day. According to Zhang Hu, registered disciples face two requirements to qualify for immortal arts training: 10 years of manual labor, and the ability to earn 3 meals daily. Only after meeting both conditions would they have the chance to learn even the most basic immortal techniques. In stark contrast, inner disciples enjoyed far superior treatment. Each had their own master, lived in private quarters, and focused solely on cultivation without any menial duties. There was also a third category, personal attendants like Wang Hao, who occupied a position between inner and registered disciples. These attendants, euphemistically called young servants, were spared manual labor and could learn some basic immortal arts, but their primary duty was serving their masters. However, such individuals typically possessed mediocre talent, mediocre talent. Throughout the months, Lin Wang had consistently consumed spring water infused with the mysterious bead during his water-carrying duties under its nourishing influence. His physique had grown increasingly vast, seemingly blessed with inexhaustible strength. What had initially taken 6 days to complete filling 10 massive vats he could now accomplish in just 3. To avoid drawing attention, he maintained his practice of rising before dawn, moving at a measured pace along the mountain paths, while his 3-day completion time raised eyebrows. Others attributed his efficiency to his diligence and long working hours. Chapter 12: The Talisman. Over the past month, nearly all registered disciples had come to know Lin Wang. Each would look down on him with disdain, their words dripping with venom. Lin Wang chose to ignore them. He understood that these disciples, having been at the bottom of the sex hierarchy, carried twisted hearts from their own suffering. Now that he had arrived, one who had entered through attempted suicide, they saw him as even lower than themselves, making him an easy target for their frustrations. He inwardly scoffed, knowing that resistance would solve nothing in the sect. Strength ruled supreme. Those disciples who had entered before him were all physically robust, some even having learned basic immortal techniques. Any resistance would only end badly for him. Yet Lin Wang was no pushover. He silently memorized every sneering face, every cruel word, waiting for the day when his strength would allow him to repay each slight. With this mindset, he carried on like one deaf and blind to their taunts, focusing solely on his water-carrying duties and secretly studying the mysterious bead. Through careful experimentation, he had tested the bead with various liquid spring water, dew, sweat, and even blood. Among these, morning dew proved most effective. Even among different types of dew, there was a hierarchy. Dawn dew that formed directly on the bead worked best, followed by night dew. Dew collected from other surfaces showed diminished effect. Spring water came next in effectiveness, while blood and sweat proved almost entirely useless. To avoid drawing attention, he had found several wild gourds in the mountains, hollowed them out, and used them to store different types of dew. He never kept these gourds with him at the sect. Instead, he buried them in various hidden locations in the mountains, retrieving them only when needed for collection, then returning them to their earthen hideaways. The only gourd he carried was spring water, offering instant rejuvenation with just a few sips when fatigue set in. He had also noticed a peculiar phenomenon. Whenever dew formed on the stone bead during the night or early morning, what appeared to be a generous doting of water would mysteriously diminish during collection, leaving barely a tenth of what seemed present. This puzzling occurrence led him to theorize that the bead itself was absorbing the dew, though the explanation seemed far-fetched even to himself. One evening, after filling the final 3 vats, Lin Wang approached the yellow-robed youth who sat in meditation. "Senior brother Liu, I need to return home tomorrow, so I won't be here." Liu barely opened his eyes, giving Lin Wang a cursory glance before grunting in acknowledgement. Lin Wang wasn't bothered by the response. He had learned from Zhang Hu that registered disciples were permitted 3 home visits annually, requiring only an application to elder son and a request for a travel talisman that demonstrated the sect's mystical art. With his father's birthday approaching, Lin Wang was determined to return home. After leaving the maintenance area, he headed toward the elder responsible for registered disciples. The Heng Yue Sect was divided into 6 courts, 5 vice courts, and 1 main court, the vice courts. Representing gold, wood, water, fire, and earth housed the registered disciples. The inner disciples and elders resided in the main court, a place Lin Wang had only admired from afar. With Henbei now standing before its gates, he called out, "Registered disciple Lin Wang requests an audience with Elder Sun." A white-robed young man sauntered out, casting a haughty glance at Lin Wang. Noting the white robes, Lin Wang's heart tightened as he nodded. By now, Lin Wang was well aware of the sex-hierarchical clothing system. Registered disciples wore either gray or yellow robes, with yellow indicating permission to practice immortal arts. Inner disciples' robes were color-coded by strength, from highest to lowest, purple, black, white, and red. The white-robed youth smirked, gave Lin Wang another dismissive glance, then turned to lead the way inside. Lin Wang maintained a neutral expression as he followed. They soon arrived at a garden filled with various flowers and herbs. The white-robed youth lazily announced, "Uncle Master Sun, a registered disciple seeks your audience." After making his announcement, he remained standing idly nearby. An aged voice drifted from within the garden, "You may go, let the registered disciple enter." The white-robed youth chuckled softly before departing. Lin Wang entered nervously, pushing open the garden gate immediately. He was struck by an intense herbal fragrance that hadn't been detectable outside. Puzzled, he glanced back at the gate, wondering how such a strong scent could be completely thin. "Why are you standing there? State your name." The voice carried clear irritation as it emanated from a corner room of the garden. Lin Wang hastily bowed and responded respectfully. "Disciple Lin Wang greets Elder Sun. My father's birthday is tomorrow, and I wish to return home for the celebration." "Lin Wang? Ah, so it's you, NPH? Those who pursue immortality must sever earthly ties. With such attachment to the mortal world, you'll never truly enter the gates of immortality," the elderly voice chastised. Lin Wang furrowed his brow and couldn't help replying, "But disciple hasn't learned any immortal arts yet. How can I be considered a cultivator?" A long silence followed. Finally, the voice responded impatiently, 3 days go quickly and return quickly here, as 1,000 lead talisman with tea uses. Attach it to your leg to greatly increase your speed. A plain yellow paper floated out from the room's window, landing gently in Wang's feet. Lin Wang carefully tucked the talisman into his robes. He had learned from Zhang Hu that all registered disciples received talismans for home visits. The sect's intention was simple: let returning disciples demonstrate some minor magical arts to attract more children to attempt the entrance test. These talismans were, in truth, of the lowest quality. Their only advantage was their simplicity. One merely needed to attach them to their legs to activate them for mortals. This meant a significant boost in speed. However, many inner disciples collected these talismans eagerly. Rumor had it they could be traded for valuable items at outside markets. The registered disciples treated them like treasures, with some even fabricating reasons to visit home just to accumulate more. Leaving the main court, Lin Wang pondered briefly before heading back to his quarters. After gathering some belongings and bidding farewell to Zhang Hu, he descended the mountain. The night sky sparkled with stars, though Lin Wang had originally planned to leave the next day. He wasn't sure how fast the talisman would allow him to travel. Worried about missing his father's birthday celebration, he decided to begin his journey immediately. Shortly after Lin Wang's departure, Elder Sun pushed open his door, intending to collect some herbs. Suddenly, his expression froze as he noticed something near the garden gate. Several stalks of blue-line grass had completely withered.